The country's courts are so busy, the justice system is about to collapse. That's the warning from one of Britain's top judges.
It's broken because it's not effective, it's not functioning in the way it used to function.
Today we're looking at Britain's criminal justice system. But to call what we see in our courts right now justice is a stretch. Most cases take years to get to trial, if indeed they ever get there. We find ourselves at a point where victims, the police and the public are routinely let down by an institution that is no longer creaking but broken. And you know what? No one really seems to be doing anything about it. How did we get here? Why is it happening? And crucially, can this mess be fixed? Welcome to the Crime Agents. Hello and welcome back to the Crime Agents with me, crime journalist Andy Hughes.
And me, the ex-cop Neil Basu.
Make sure you're listening to us on Global Player and you can watch our full episodes on YouTube as well.
And if you're not following us on socials already, we're at the Crime Agents on all major platforms.
So Neil, I think we should start by taking a look at how the criminal justice system works. So let's do a bit of role play here. Just say I'm involved in a scrap in Newcastle. You're the cops. What happens next?
Oh, are we recording the show or are you just admitting to something? So, I don't have a badge anymore. So you're involved in a scrap. Someone's called the police. We've turned up, hopefully quickly, hopefully with a bit of competence and hopefully with a little bit of compassion for the victim that you've been having a scrap with. And you are pointed out as the suspect. So we're going to do a little bit of gathering evidence at the scene. We're going to speak to some people. Some people are going to tell us what's happened. We're going to ask you who you are and what's happened. And if we think, or we've got reasonable grounds to suspect you have committed a crime, and we think there are certain criteria, it's a bit boring, but to say we're not necessarily just going to arrest you depending on what the nature or the severity of the crime is. But if we can't determine who you are, if we think you're a danger to yourself or the public, if we think you're going to re-offend if we walk away, then you are likely to get arrested.
Okay.
And the difference between me and a normal member of the public, you have a citizen's power of arrest. Everyone will have heard of that. Yeah. But the difference between a cop and a normal citizen is I only have to reasonably suspect you of committing the offence.
Okay.
In other words, I don't have to have seen it. I don't have to have caught you in the act of committing it. I just need to reasonably suspect it. So somebody alleging you've had this scrap and committed this crime means I can now arrest you. I also have the monopoly on the use of force in society as a police officer.
Right. So
I can use reasonable grounds to detain you. And that can be as simple as putting my hand on your arm to say, you're under arrest, Andy, to a full-blown, if you're fighting, I can use reasonable force to protect myself and members of the public and to arrest you and slap the handcuffs on you and make sure that you're not a danger to yourself or others. You'll then get cautioned. So I'll be telling you who I am. I'm a police officer from this station. You're being arrested.
You have the right to remain silent.
Well, the right to remain silent is a really interesting one because the caution changed during my service to you do not have to say anything, but if you do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court, that can be given in evidence. So effectively it's saying, yes, you have the right to remain silent, but if you've got a defence, if you want to say something, you ought to say it now. And that'll be repeated to you back at the police station when we're interviewing you about this crime. So basically you'll get that. Anything you say to the cop then will be recorded, written down, and that will be evident. That's the first bit of evidence against you. And then immediately, where you're standing, who you've had the scrap with, you all become crime scenes.
Okay.
So the venue, the other person, your clothing, their clothing, any, let's be graphic, bodily fluid that you've exchanged, whether it's blood, saliva, spit, that's all part of the crime scene, and that has to be investigated.
So I'm taking down the nick.
You are.
I'm booked in. Who am I dealing with at the nick?
At the nick, the arresting officer will have to replay exactly why you've been arrested to the custody sergeant. So sitting behind a desk will be a man or a woman looking quite stern and quite professional and quite efficient, I hope, sitting behind a computer that's taking details from the officer, and they're responsible for deciding whether you get detained or not. So it's quite possible at that point, and it has happened, it's quite rare, where the arresting officer's got it wrong or the arresting officer gives really bad evidence, and the sergeant says, I don't think I've got grounds to detain this person. The other reason for not detaining you is if you're medically unfit.
Right.
So it might be that the custody sergeant looks at you and goes, you need to see a doctor right now, or I need to get you to hospital quickly, or I need to, put you in a cell and not question you now until a doctor can see you and declare you fit to be detained. But it's the sergeant's decision. They'll do a risk assessment on you. They will check your physical condition, your mental condition.
Yeah.
Do you understand what's happening to you? And they will ask you a whole series of questions in order to get that detail. But the most important thing is the evidence given by the arresting officer.
Okay.
And that has to be spot on. The sergeant's there to test the arresting officer, not just to incarcerate you.
Okay, and then I'm presumably taken to a custody suite or a cell.
You'll be in the custody suite because that's where the sergeant sits, but you'll be taken to a cell. And depending on whether you're a youngster under the age of 18, so we have basically youth detention facilities, which are a little less intimidating, but not much.
Yeah.
I mean, the cells are cells. They're designed to keep you inside.
Yeah.
And you'll be taken to one of those cells. Those cells have CCTV coverage.
Yeah.
They've been checked so that, it's pretty much you're in a grey box with a metal bed with a thin mattress on. You'll be given a blanket.
It's not a 5-star hotel.
No, if we have to take your clothes because they're part of the crime scene evidence, your clothes will be taken and you'll be given either a tracksuit or a jumpsuit, like a forensic paper suit to wear. And you'll be getting examined. You've had a scrap, so you'll be being examined by a doctor for any injuries you might have, either defensive or offensive injuries you might have. And this will all take place in the cell. If you're considered a risk, you will already have had all your property will have been taken from you by the custody sergeant and logged in front of you. But if you're considered a risk, your laces will be taken out, your shoes, your belt will be taken. Anything you could use to harm yourself will be taken off you.
So you've got 24 hours to question me or charge me. When does the clock start?
The clock starts the minute the custody sergeant authorises your detention.
Okay, so it's not the moment of arrest. It's when
your detention has been authorised.
Okay, and how long will it take once I'm in the cell to then start to be questioned?
Well, the main thing is the arresting officer and then the investigating officer. They may be one and the same, but if it's a serious crime, a detective may be called. So the arresting officer will have to go and find a detective. Good luck. Sometimes they're in the pub, sometimes they're in the canteen. Mostly they're sitting in an office, hopefully attached to the custody suite, but sometimes these days they're in a different police station elsewhere.
Okay.
They'll talk through the evidence, they'll see the officer's notes, they'll want the officer to make a full written statement that they can look at and say, where's the evidence? They will then have to go and interview witnesses and the victim of the offence before they get to interviewing you. The custody sergeant will have told you, you have rights here. You can have a duty solicitor present. If they don't think you're mentally fit or you're very young, you can have an appropriate adult, someone who's trained to be in the custody suite with you and look after your rights. They're not there to give you legal advice. They're not there to answer questions for you. They're there to check that we are doing the right thing by you. But a duty solicitor, if you don't have a lawyer of your own, and let's be honest, who has a lawyer of their own unless they're the kind of people that who are slightly more organised in their criminal endeavours. Most people have to, but they can call a duty solicitor for you. You'll have a private consultation with that duty solicitor whilst the detective is off gathering the evidence to interview.
And would I have to pay for that solicitor?
No. So that duty solicitor, everybody who's arrested has the right to a free consultation with a solicitor. And that solicitor is paid through a system called legal aid. So you're not paying for that solicitor. Obviously, if you're not happy with that solicitor and you'd rather pay for a solicitor of your own or somebody who's been recommended to you, you can do that as well. But otherwise, you get free legal advice.
Okay, just say you've got enough evidence, you've seen CCTV, you've got a statement from the victim. You've got enough to charge me. Who delivers that news to me, and where does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, the first stage is you're always going to be interviewed. Even if you decide, and quite often a duty solicitor will say, don't say anything, because I don't know enough at this point.
No comment, no comment.
Just go no comment.
Just say, I've got no comment.
And if you're innocent, listen, if you're arrested and you're innocent, most people who have nothing to hide will talk.
Have you ever known anyone who is innocent to go no comment?
Yes. And normally on the advice of a solicitor who's either inexperienced or effectively this is a terrible thing to say, but some solicitors are basically, they want to get as much money as possible, so they want to elongate the process.
You shock me, Neil.
Well, not all of them. So I've also dealt with some fantastic duty solicitors who really cared about their clients. And this is one of those terrible things to say is some of my best friends are solicitors. So,
that old chestnut.
Yes, that old chestnut. So they are not all the same. But sometimes that happens. What you don't want is bad advice from a solicitor.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're innocent and there's a way of proving your innocence straight away, tell the police straight away so they can go and get that evidence to exonerate you.
Yeah.
So we don't want to charge you if you're not the right person. Nobody wants to waste their time. So you will be interviewed, you will be asked questions. What I said before counts. So if you decide not to say anything then, but you decide to say something when you're actually in court defending yourself, that will weigh against you. They will say, well, you've made that up to defend yourself in court. You could have said it at the time.
Okay.
So don't go no comment if you're innocent is my advice.
Well, there we go.
But I'm not a qualified
I hope you're all
solicitor.
listening out there.
I'm not a qualified solicitor.
Okay, you've got enough to charge me. Who delivers that news to me, and where's it done?
Well, we either the arresting or investigating officer, the person in charge of the case, the officer in charge of the case, the OIC, will tell you you're going to be charged.
Okay.
Will take you back in front of the custody sergeant, and then the custody sergeant will read the charge to you.
Okay.
So in a scrap, it'll be an assault against the person. So it'll either be common assault, ABH, grievous bodily harm, attempted murder potentially.
Yeah.
So you'll be being charged with a crime. The full charge will be read out to you. You'll be cautioned again, and you'll have an opportunity to respond to the charge.
And when will I see court for the first time? How long will that take?
Well, this depends on the decision of the custody sergeant and what kind of risk you pose to the public. So you will either be released under investigation because we haven't actually finished the case yet and we want to have you back. But if you've been charged, you'll probably be bailed. So you might be bailed with or without conditions. So you might be bailed with conditions where you can't approach the victim, you can't approach witnesses, you can't. You may have to reside at an address.
Can't go on holiday.
Yeah. So there may be a load of restrictions around you until you appear at court, and you'll be bailed with a court date. So you'll be going to court at a certain point in the future.
Okay.
That time. There's no point in me telling you what time that's necessarily going to be, because that might be the next day, it might be in a month's time, at the next available
It's
court
fair to
date.
say, isn't it, if it's something like a murder charge or something, you're going to be kept and then you're going to be produced at the first available opportunity.
I've never known somebody charged with murder to be bailed. So,
Well, no.
So in that case, it's called a remand. So you get remanded into the prison system.
Yes.
So you become one of the currently thousands of prisoners waiting in the prison system on remand, waiting for a trial. So effectively, innocent till proven guilty, you've been charged by the police, but you're waiting in a prison, waiting for your day in court.
So just say I go to prison, I'm on remand for assault or GBH, what have you. Am I mixing with murderers in there or paedophiles?
Potentially.
Who am I mixing in there with? And are the people who I'm in there with also on remand, or are they already convicted?
You'll normally be in a remand prison with other prisoners on remand, but they may be on remand for all kinds of offences.
For murder?
Yeah. So this is a very unpleasant place
Shoplifting?
to be. And it depends. Drugs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the crime is. You'll be on a prison wing with people who go to prison do not like talking about why they're there in prison. So my friends in the prison system will tell you that you don't. The first thing you don't do when you go to a prison is say, "What are you in here for?" Yeah. So people sort of keep it to themselves, and particularly if it's an offence, if you've been charged with a sexual crime, you become a target inside that prison. So, even the criminal community has codes of conduct, and depending on what you've been charged with, you could be even more at risk. Yeah. It is a very, very unpleasant place to be.
So the magistrate is the first opportunity to plead guilty or not guilty, depending on the seriousness of the charge. Just say it's a murder charge. That will be sent straight to Crown Court because the magistrate's court just isn't capable of dealing with such a serious charge. But just say a common assault, a normal assault. I will be given that opportunity to plead guilty or not guilty. I will then be given the opportunity, again, depending on the seriousness of the crime, whether I want to take it to Crown Court and for it to be heard before a jury, rather than heard in a magistrate's court where my fate will be decided by three magistrates who are effectively just normal people who are volunteers for the court service. Many people are advised by their legal team to take it to Crown Court. But interestingly, 95% of criminal cases are actually dealt with in the Magistrates Court.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
interesting you say that figure, because I think it's slightly lower than that. But
Oh,
when I
is
say
it?
slightly lower, I think it's 90%.
Oh, 90.
So 90% of cases are heard in the Magistrates Court.
That's
Most
still
people,
massively
it's
high,
massive,
isn't
yeah.
it? And I that surprised me when I saw that. Probably because I've spent so many, so many hours in a Crown Court.
Well, we've all read your stories, Andy, and we're all terrified. So the trouble is, we only report on stories which are major crimes.
Yeah.
So everyone thinks that every crime is major and everything is in the Crown Court.
Yeah, that's
and
it,
everything.
isn't it?
We watch TV dramas, and that's all Crown Court based.
Yeah.
But actually, 90%, you're quite right. Those three magistrates who are sitting in front of you, they tend to be lay members of the public who've been interviewed, decent, upstanding people in the community who've been interviewed for this, but they're given rudimentary legal training, and they have a clerk of the court who's a trained legal practitioner who gives them advice.
Yeah.
But basically, they're three normal members
Well,
of the
they
public.
are, and they have the ability to send someone to prison for up to 6 months. But if it's going to be any longer than that, then...
They've just had, I don't know how long this has been in place, but they've got a temporary right to sentence people up to 12 months, and I think they're talking.
That's right. It's
they're
because
talking about making that
they're trying
permanent.
to take more stress off the Crown Court.
Well, they're trying to
system.
take even more cases into the Magistrates Court.
Yeah.
Good luck with doing that, because the last time I've got a friend who's a magistrate in the southwest who says in their briefings there are 20,000 magistrates short in this country.
Well, yeah.
And I've got friends that I've refereed to be magistrates in my previous
Do you
life.
ever fancy it yourself?
And I think it's an incredibly worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah.
So I can talk. I can be all super woke about the fact that these are members of the community, being effectively judge and jury over you and the sentence and the crime you've committed in their community. So it's the closest thing you get to community justice.
Yeah.
Which is very different from the Crown Court with a judge who might be very far removed from the type of person you are. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah,
they kind of live quite a rarefied existence.
They do.
Part of the criticism of the judiciary is they lose touch with the common person.
Yes.
Well, you haven't got that. You've got magistrates sitting in your community
Yeah,
making decisions.
there's quite a
on
few
you.
ex-cops as magistrates.
Yeah,
as
I mean,
well,
why
isn't there?
we know the system, so
Yeah.
we also understand the principles of evidence. We are, generally speaking, we are experts in the criminal justice process
Yes.
and the system, and we kind of understand. We understand the difference between.
Well, some of you do.
Beyond
Yeah,
truth.
some
I
of
was
you do.
waiting.
I wouldn't go that
I was
far.
waiting for you to strike me down there. So I will say this: as long as we do this podcast, which I hope is for a very long time, 80% of police officers are magnificent and get it right.
Yeah.
And those are the people I'm talking about. They're the kind of people you do want investigating your case, whether you're a suspect or a defendant. They're the ones you want investigating your case because they will get to the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Just like a good journalist, Andy. Just like a good journalist.
So who decides to charge me then? Is it up to you?
Yeah, it can be. It depends on the offence. But normally, since 1984, there's been an independent body called the Crown Prosecution Service, and they are the decision makers about the charge. So the investigating officer, the officer in the case, has got to make their case to the Crown Prosecution Service lawyer that they've got sufficient evidence, a prima facie case it's called.
Yeah.
So I've got enough evidence to charge this person. At this point, it doesn't have to be enough evidence to convict,
Yeah.
but it needs to be enough evidence for that charge to stick. You might want to gather further evidence, and then eventually the Crown Prosecution Service will apply a two-code test. Firstly, there's enough evidence here for a realistic prospect of conviction, and then the second code is it in the public interest to prosecute you? If those two things are met, you are going to court.
So you've heard what happens in a magistrate court. The Crown Court is a very different beast, of course. This is where the defendant will again be asked to plead guilty or not guilty. If they plead not guilty, that will then go to trial. Later down the line, after several case management hearings, a jury will be selected and the trial will then start. And again, depending on the complexity of the case may be for one day, it may be for 3 months, who knows? It all depends on the amount of evidence. And at the end of that trial, the defendant will then be found guilty or not guilty, and again, depending on the seriousness of the crime, will or won't be sent to jail for that. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of how it works. So there'll be much more of that later on. But next we're going to be looking at how the criminal justice system reached breaking point. Was the last Tory government to blame for the state it finds itself in now? That and much more after the break. So let's look at why the system is so broken. I find it now, I mean, I've been a crime journalist for 20 years. When I step foot in a court now, it just seems like a total and utter shambles. It's just so laborious. I mean, we've got a situation now where cases are taking years to get to court. There's one of the Crown Courts in London. They've already got like 70 odd cases listed for 2029. And all that happens here is that victims pull out of these cases. Justice is never done. Neil, how on earth have we got to this point?
I don't know. I was reading Sir Brian Leveson is a judge I respect hugely, in charge of surveillance commissioners now, but was given the opportunity to review the system. I was reading some stuff he put out recently, and 75,000 cases awaiting trial in the Crown Court. 75,000. That's double than 2019. Clearly, that points to the fact that COVID's had a massive effect.
Well, that's it. I mean, COVID had a huge effect, and also since 2010, more than 250 courts have closed. So the cases are going massively up. Less courts to deal with them. It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science at all. And the what you said, I heard of a trial being fixed for 2029.
Yeah.
You know that old cliche, justice delayed is justice denied?
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine being the victim?
That's it.
Well, can you imagine being the defendant or potentially being on remand and saying, that I've committed a crime where I might get a 3-year prison sentence, but I've got to wait 4 years. Or not committed a crime. Or innocent, and I've got to wait 4 years to go to trial. So it's ruining everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And also you haven't got confidence in the system. But if the system's broken, it's because you've just said courts have closed. There aren't enough buildings, there aren't enough judges, there aren't enough lawyers, there aren't enough police officers to start with. So the investigations are taking longer. The whole system has got incredibly complicated, but also it's been dramatically affected by a lack of funding. Now, every public service says that, but here you are seeing it in a way that is immediately touching everybody's lives. It's making us less safe.
It's the seriousness of the consequences in this, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Let me tell you a story that kind of sums up how courts are in this day and age. There was a case recently where he was one of the 10 most wanted men in the UK. He went on the run. It was like child sex cases. He was a paedophile on the run in Spain. He was on the run for about 3 years. Eventually caught by the police. They did a great job. He was brought back to Britain, was put through to a judge. Now the prosecutor had just arrived, clearly hadn't read anything about the case, stood up and just read out the charges. None of the circumstances. It wasn't even mentioned that he was one of the top 10 most wanted men in the UK and that he had been on the run. So all the judge had was these list of charges. Do you know what he got? You know what he sentenced with? 2.5 years. He was one of the 10 most wanted men in the country, on the run in Spain, eventually caught and brought back. And do you know what else? The police weren't even in the court to tell the prosecutor that this guy was way more serious than they thought.
When you were in court 20 years ago, what would it have looked like then, do you think?
Totally different. I mean, that was my first job, basically, just being a court reporter. I used to go along to South Shields Magistrates Court every single morning. They used to get through dozens and dozens of cases. It ran like clockwork. And then it was the next week, that case would be in Crown Court. The trial would happen between 3 and 6 months. The victim would get justice or not within a year. Now we're looking at 5 years.
Because you used to see the local journalists there all the time. You'd have a good relationship with them. You'd have a bit
Little scribblers,
bit of banter, and you'd be talking about the cases that they were hearing. And I used to think it was because journalists ran out of money to send their court reporters to court. It's become a bit of a dying art.
Yeah.
I think you got bored with all of the delays and the waiting. And
do you know what? I used to love going to court. It used to be the best part of my job. Now, when I'm sent to court or when I have to think about going to court, my heart sinks.
Yeah.
Because I just know what's going to happen. There's going to be delays. There's going to be lawyers not turning up. Sometimes the judge won't even turn up.
Yeah.
It is a shambles.
And you see the wasted time for that. This should all be about the victim. At the end of the day, it should all be about the victim, and then partially all about the defendant getting a fair trial.
Oh, yeah.
So they're the two people who are being left waiting. But think of the wasted money in that court, the wasted police time, the waste of witnesses' time, the waste of no wonder people are losing confidence in the criminal justice system when even the people whose job it is to be there are getting frustrated and cheesed off by the delays. I mean, I was a career detective. The reason you did that job was to go to court, have your day in court, give your evidence well, and hopefully put a seriously guilty person, dangerous person behind bars. The fact that we are frustrated, police officers are frustrated about going to court.
Everyone's frustrated.
As the unintended effect of that, though, is do you want to arrest people? Do you want to go through that long process we described in part 1? Do you want to do all of that not to get your day in court or for it to be delayed or to get a result like you've just described?
Yeah. Do you know what happens in most organisations if they're running behind? They work longer hours and they get more staff. In the courts, it's exactly the opposite. Court doesn't even start till 10. It then only runs till 1. There's now then an hour-long break. How many places have hour-long lunches these days? Did you as a cop? I can't imagine you did. Did you have lunch?
I'm trying to remember the last time I had lunch on the job.
Well, there you go.
Retirement has enabled me to put on a few pounds, put it like that.
And then the court resumes at 2 and then goes till 4. I mean, but quite often, especially on a weekend, on a Friday, you'll find the judge will say, I'm only available till 3 p.m. I wonder why that is. I wonder if he's got a golfing trip lined up for the weekend. A cynical part of me thinks so. But why is court not running for 7 days a week? Why are they not starting at 8 a.m. and finishing at 6 p.m.? Why is that not happening?
Well, I think this is something they're going to have to look at, and I know that Brian Leveson is going to come back with a part 2 of his report into what's gone wrong, and part of that will be the efficiency of the courts and how they're run. At the moment, it's run by the judiciary, so they are expected to manage the trial process, manage the length of court time, manage the listings to make sure that... and I think one of the things he would say is a lot of experience has gone out of the system. You know, money dried up in 2008 for all kind of public services. But of course, what you were left with was a load of experience left the profession as well. So now you haven't got enough numbers, you haven't got enough judges, enough magistrates, enough court staff, enough court clerks, and people who know the system and how to run it. And it's got, as you say, more and more shambolic, more and more difficult. All of the process is longer, but they haven't had the extra resources required to fit that in. And unless they go to, do you remember the 2011 when the riots happened?
Yeah.
We got to a process of rapid justice, and Southport was another demonstration of that. But in 2011, they started running night court, so you had 24/7 court.
They can do it when they want to.
Absolutely. As you said, any organisation that was going bankrupt, unless it got its act in gear and started working harder, would work harder. The system currently isn't working harder. It's not working harder, it's not working smarter, it's not using technology well, but it doesn't have enough people, doesn't have enough buildings, doesn't have enough time to fit this extraordinary caseload that we've just described.
Yeah. Do you know what happened to me the other day, bizarrely? I got a direct message on LinkedIn from a criminal lawyer, and she said to me, I've had enough. I need a career change. Is there any chance you could help me become a crime journalist? Because it's probably the only other thing that I could probably do because of my knowledge. And I didn't even know where to start. I was dumbfounded. Like,
that's a weird thing to say.
Well, also, it's like I know this lady. She's a great lawyer. But the system has just broken her. She wants out. All she wanted to do when she was young was be a criminal lawyer. She achieved that dream. And now the system has broken her. She wants no more to do with it. She now wants to be a crime journalist.
Ironically, I know young police officers who've left to be lawyers because that's all they thought they could do if they couldn't be a police officer, who've also been broken by the policing system as well. Everyone has been broken by the same fundamental problem. Not enough investment, not enough people, caseload too high. That is fundamentally the point. And you've got policing, Crown Prosecution Service, the criminal bar, the courts, prisons, probation. they're all part of one system to keep us all safe.
Which
and
one
they're
is
all
working
broken.
well, Neil? Which one? Name one.
I mean, you could flip a coin and you'd be wrong. I mean, they're all broken.
They're all
and
broken.
if that system is all broken from start to finish,
Yeah.
I mean, we described what happens when you scrap in Newcastle and I come and nick you. That's the start of the hopper.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we start putting people into the system. If the system's broken the whole way down, you end up with where we are today, which is a system that's never going to be able to recover unless it gets more money and more people. And your story about the criminal lawyer, that used to be one of the highest paid professions in the country. People are leaving the criminal bar. They're not even joining, even if they studied law and want to be a practicing lawyer. They don't want to be in criminal law. They want to be in corporate law. There's no money in criminal law.
Oh, there's not.
The legal aid system is broken. They're not reimbursed for the kind of hours they do. And all of this makes justice worse because you cut corners, you don't put the time in, you don't put the effort in court. And we are in danger of more miscarriages of justice because people are not there to do the job properly.
There'll be so many criminal lawyers listening to this nodding away because it is one of the biggest myths that you will ever find, that criminal lawyers make money. The only people who make money from criminal trials are barristers. That's it.
I mean, the two things, and we ought to put these things in links on the socials, but read the Leveson report if you want to see just how dire the state of the court system is. But also, have you heard of a book called The Secret Barrister?
I have, yes.
He really ought to come and give us some advice on this show, but read that, or she, because they're totally anonymous, aren't they? But read that book. I mean,
it's a cracker.
As an experienced police officer, it scared the living daylights out of me. But if you're an innocent person in this country, thinking, thank God I live in the United Kingdom because the criminal justice system works, read The Secret Barrister.
We should get them on. It will
terrify you.
It is. It's almost a parody.
If you're out there, Secret Barristers, send us some questions.
Let us know because we would love to speak to you.
Yeah.
Right. So in the last part of today's episode, we're going to be looking at solutions to the problems in the criminal justice system, if there are any indeed. Do we need to build more prisons, or should we stop sending so many people to prison? That's all to come after the break. Do you know the thing is, Neil? I think unless you've been a victim, you have no idea what it's like waiting so long for justice to be done. And do you know the thing that drives me particularly mad is that no one really seems to care, do they?
No, well, I think policing cares because they're...
But police don't decide.
No, they don't.
It's not up to them to fix it, is it?
Let me be clear about that. They care for two reasons. Decent police officers really care about their victims. That's why they go to work.
Yeah.
They do it to give victims some sense of justice. But even if they don't, so even a bad police officer who doesn't care about the victim really cares about their own time, and they don't want their own time wasted. And this is the thing. They're always very, very cynical about the criminal justice system themselves. They see it as a revolving door. They nick people. People never get sent to court. They never get charged properly. They never get charged with the right offence. They don't get the right kind of sentence. They don't do any rehabilitation. They come out and they have to be nicked again. That's the traditional policing view of the criminal justice system. Actually, that's not been true for a long time because of various policies have meant that actually sentences are much longer. Prisons are full, so police officers are clearly doing a reasonable job because they're arresting a lot of people and they are going to prison. So actually the question now is, how did this system break? And at some point you're going to say, can Neil and Andy solve the problem? I think we need a consultant's fee if we're going to be able to do that. But there's definitely been a change of, there's been a political emphasis. You can blame the 14 years on austerity and what happened in the financial crisis.
That's an easy excuse.
I know, and it is, but it's true.
It is true.
We haven't, but you can't.
We need to try harder.
I know. I've sat in those rooms where politicians are trying to decide on where they put their money. Fair play, it's probably the most difficult decision you'll ever make. At the moment, it's the Ministry of Defence because we're effectively at war, and the National Health Service, which is effectively falling over. That leaves no money for the Home Office and for everything we're talking about now. It leaves very little money for the education system. How do you decide where the priorities are?
If you were sat down with Keir Starmer tomorrow, what would you say? What would your advice to him be to fix this system?
I think of it as an entire system. So don't think of trying to fix the police service, trying to fix the Crown Prosecution Service, trying to fix the Bar Society, trying to fix the legal aid system, trying to fix probation and prisons. You have to look at it in its entirety and say there's a system problem here. and the choke points in the system is where you're going to have to address those choke points.
It's too disparate.
Yeah. And
But
strategically, the main thing I'd say to him is this is part of your first priority. The security of your people is your first priority as a government, anywhere in the world. This system, this criminal justice system, is part of that responsibility.
This government talks about wanting people to feel more safe. This problem right here is at the very heart of why people don't feel safe.
Yes, I think that's true. And I think part of the problem is we spent a very long time with what I call criminal deterrence policy and ideology, which is effectively arrest as many people as you can, lock them up and throw away the key. We want a harder law and order policy. And that's a very traditional conservative stance on law and order, the party of law and order. The difficulty with that is if you don't build enough prisons, and they didn't, and arguably no political administration has invested enough in the prison system, but if you're going to lock people up and give them longer sentences, you need more prisons. Yeah. And the fact that you haven't got more prisons means that people are now being locked up 23 hours a day. Yeah. If you lock somebody up 23 hours a day...
Well, that's because there's no prison staff.
Yeah, you're going to create animals. If they went in there as dangerous, you're going to create animals. 23 hours a day is no time for exercise, conversation, education, rehabilitation. Yeah. There's none of that. Yeah. You haven't got enough prison staff to look after them. All of that is broken as well. So your point about this is a system that should make us all feel safe, and it isn't. That is part of the problem.
Mm. Well, I just, I do wonder, whose problem is it to fix? Is it the Home Office? Is it the MOJ? Or do you think this is one for the Prime Minister?
There you go. There's a policy decision in itself, a political decision to separate the Home Office and the MOJ because it was seen, remember John Reid? Not fit for purpose. Yeah. So you separate these two things because it's too big a beast for one Secretary of State to manage. The unintended consequence of that is you've got loads of bits of the system I've just described don't work together to the same
different ministers which have their own priorities.
Oh, and they rotate so quickly. Yeah. I mean, they blame the civil service for rotating quickly, senior police officers for rotating quickly. Ministers are the worst.
Of course.
So if you're, and somebody was saying to me from the court system, someone was saying the whole from the prison system, saying every minister who comes in, who wants to, whether they're Tory, Labour, doesn't matter what their politics are, they come in wanting a rehabilitative system. So they don't come in wanting a hard criminal deterrence system. They want a system which means there's a lower recidivism rate. So basically people aren't reoffending when they come out, making it safer for all of us. Yeah. They come with all of these ideas, and within about 3 weeks they realise there's no votes in that because we as the public want people locked up. That's how we feel safe.
But are we locking up the right people? Because I see a stream. I'll tell you what, so I went outside. It was part of the government's early release scheme where people were let out after a third of their sentence instead of the normal period, which is half their sentence. And I went outside Brixton Prison. I must have interviewed about 20 ex-prisoners, all delighted to be out, of course.
I bet they were.
Do you know what? They were nearly all shoplifters. I was thinking, why are we just clogging the prison system with shoplifters? Listen, I'm not saying shoplifting isn't... Well, in fact, I am saying it isn't serious. It's low-level crime. Why are we sending shoplifters to jail?
So... to be devil's advocate for a moment, it is low-level crime. Our entire criminal justice system is based on different tiers of crime. So you remember Braverman saying there's no such thing as a lesser crime. You're the Home Secretary. You ought to know the entire criminal justice system is based on different levels of crime. And you're absolutely right, in my view, is we send too many people for minor crimes to prison who are not a danger to society, and we don't send people sometimes who've committed major crimes to prison for long enough. But there's two problems with that, and I'm going to try and avoid the entire retail community coming back at us on this podcast and saying we don't consider it a lesser crime, because definitely assaults on shop workers have gone through the roof. So there's more people shoplifting, and they're using more violent methods to do it. There's a lot of organised crime behind shoplifting now. So the shoplifters themselves, a bit like we've talked about terrorists, the people who are committing the crime are not the Mr. and Mrs. Big who are behind the crime, who should be locked up for a long period of time. But the point being is there are things you can do with shoplifters who are shoplifting for what I would describe as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're either addicts who are trying to feed a habit, or they haven't got enough food to eat,
or they're stealing baby food or something.
So there's a poverty trap as well. How you cure that is not by locking people up in prison.
No.
You're not doing anything other than making it impossible for them to ever have a job, ever get off their addiction, ever have any kind of meaningful place in society. But if you're going to do that, you need more time in prison, more prison officers, more rehabilitation inside prisons. And when people are released, you need more probation officers to be managing those people in the community, and you need more services in the community to help them rehabilitate. We have none of that.
Yeah, I mean,
we have none of that.
What you're suggesting here is that this needs serious radical thinking and serious overhaul.
It does. It needs much less emphasis on the prison system and much more emphasis on rehabilitation, much more out-of-court resolutions, much more community resolutions rather than prison resolutions, and much more use of technology monitoring people in the community. You can serve your sentence in the community doing something productive given modern technology. We could talk about tagging all day long. In the old days, it wasn't fit for purpose. It would send an alarm every 2 minutes, or it wouldn't send an alarm at all. You couldn't keep track of anyone. But in order to keep track of people, you're going to need a system behind that to do that, and a system to make sure that people are obeying their licence conditions. They're going to work. They're reporting to their probation officer. They're actually providing a meaningful part of community life. We don't have any of those systems in place, and no investment for it, and no plan for that to be the alternative to building more prisons. And all I've heard so far, even from this administration, who doesn't have a kind of criminal deterrence ideology, I haven't heard anything other than we're going to build more prisons.
Given the Prime Minister is an ex-lawyer, a very distinguished one, ex-head of public prosecutions for the CPS, are you a bit disappointed that he's not really seeing the problem here?
I think
or if he is, he's not doing anything about it.
Am I disappointed by it? I'm disappointed that he doesn't seem to have got round to it as a priority, because domestic politics has taken second place to international politics. We know all of that. That's for our granddaddy, the newsagents, to discuss. But yeah, I'm slightly disappointed that the Home Affairs has been taking a back seat. This is a person who knows the system intimately. He will know what's wrong with the system. He will have read all the stuff that Leveson has put into him, and he will have gone, I know this. I know. And, most importantly, he does know how to fix it. Does he have the resources and the political backing to fix it? I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, as you say, it is such radical thinking.
It is.
Such investment is needed. I mean, just looking at radical thinking, there's been suggestions getting rid of jury trials. What do you make of that?
Well, this is again this is something the public won't realise, because I think the public would say, well, a jury trial is absolutely my right as a UK citizen. There's never been any such right to a jury trial. Your right, and this goes right back to the Magna Carta, your right is to have a fair trial. So your right is not to have a trial by your peers or a jury trial. It's to have a fair trial. Everyone I know who's served on a jury says it's a bit of a shambles. I mean, I would...
It is.
My experience, 30 years of prosecuting and being in court and watching people get weighed off, is generally speaking, my experience is that juries more often than not get it right. I sometimes worry when people have come back who've had jury service and they've described the long waits, the lack of selection.
It's the most tedious thing you can ever do.
Absolutely. And do they really feel like they're contributing to the justice system? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they do.
They're desperate to get back to work. When they're given the jury summons, they think, great, I've got a couple of weeks off here. Starting at 10, finishing at 4. This is great.
Faith in the system. But my concern about that is they potentially promote miscarriages of justice in two ways. I don't mean a miscarriage of justice in that, sometimes you get the guilty party gets let off because they're bored, or they don't consider the evidence, or the foreman isn't good enough. And judges have expressed surprise at jury verdicts.
They do. They do it in their own subtle way, don't they? Do you know what crime journalists all say about juries? And I'm sure the police say the same. Never trust a jury.
Well, I've heard that many times.
Well, it's because we obviously, as crime journalists, we all say, "What do you think, guilty?" And then we all say, "Oh, he's guilty, but he'll get off."
The more complex the trial, the more esoteric, the more academic the trial is, the less likely you're going to get a fair result. Unless you're, for instance, serious fraud is the obvious one. How few serious fraud convictions there've been, because those trials run on for years. And a jury, a normal lay jury who has no experience of investment banking, international finance, the way tax positions in different countries, how are they supposed to follow all of that over a period of years? You know, potentially many,
These are just
many
normal
months.
people, you know,
and keep their day job.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, it's kind of. So I think actually, it's about time we had a different system. It's about time we had. I'm not saying get rid of jury trials entirely. I think that needs a bit of a better debate. But there ought to be a system whereby we have a bit like the magistrates. So one up from the magistrates, you'll I think Leveson is recommending this, a kind of a bench, a Crown Court bench division where you've got a judge sitting with a couple of lawyers making decisions at a slightly lower level. For the most serious cases, I think he's still advocating jury trial. We've just said never trust a jury. I don't know if you're. I mean, I'd be interested in what the public think. I'd rather be in front of 12 of my peers than a judge and 2 lawyers.
Oh God, me too.
There you go. There you go. So I think if the public feel the same, getting rid of jury trials will be a step too far.
Yeah. Well, listen, lots to be done, and something for sure needs to happen.
Do you think we've earned our consultancy fee?
Well, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, thanks for listening to The Crime Agents. Make sure you've subscribed on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.
And we'll be back with another main episode next Wednesday. We'll have a bonus episode for you on Friday. And remember, if you have any questions for us, anything at all, either about our real life experiences or about something in the news, please send them in and we'll answer them in a bonus episode soon.
And you can send them by email to thecrimeagents@global.com or follow us on social media. We're at The Crime Agents on all major platforms, and you can also leave a question there. That's it from me. Goodbye for now.
And from me, goodbye.